Parents of kids who do sports know that proper hydration is a key to their success. Many sports drinks have a lot of artificial ingredients. If you're looking for a healthy alternative to sports drinks, try Cure. Cure is the perfect balance of electrolytes and glucose to help your body rehydrate quickly. It contains all natural ingredients such as coconut water powder and pink Himalayan salt, as well as it's free of preservatives and sweeteners. And it also comes in all these amazing flavors. All you have to do is take one of these pouches and add it to your water bottle, shake it, and you're good to go. Click on my link to get 20% off your purchase.
Hello and welcome to the Love and Compassion podcast with Giselle. We believe that love and compassion have the power to heal our lives and our world. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. On today's podcast, we'll be talking about creating a magical life. Our guest is 11-time best-selling author and award winner Diana Wentworth. She is well known as the co-author of the 2 Chicken Soup for the Soul books. The film rights to her romantic memoir, Send Me Someone, were purchased by Lifetime Network. She and her late husband founded The Inside Edge, a weekly breakfast forum in Southern California, which founded many celebrated authors and speakers of today. Diana is a sought-after international keynote speaker and loves to support her clients. She is also the host of Women's Circle and is publishing her latest book, Expect Magic, which is coming out in 2024. Please join me in welcoming Diana Wentworth. Hi, Diana.
Hi, I'm so happy to be with you.
Yes, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. I'm so excited to talk to you. You've lived such an extraordinary life thus far.
Yes,
Obviously not done yet, so you've still got more extraordinary to go.
Right.
I was wondering if you could tell our listeners a little bit about how you got to this extraordinary life. Like what were your beginnings like? What led you here?
Oh my gosh, what a life. You know, there's a joke on Facebook about sliding in at the end of your life with champagne and what saying,
Yeah.
woo, right. It's kind of been that way with me, honestly. I am just really so grateful. All sorts of magic has happened in my life. So much serendipity, so many magical meetings. They're just completely unexplainable. So I guess I should say that I was widowed 2 years ago for the second time. So I'm reinventing my life right now with an even more daring encore, to tell you the truth. This Saturday, the Women Gone Wild Wealth Edition is going to be launched. And so I'm going to be doing a 10-minute, what they call a she talk, which is for the women veterans who have the highest suicide rate, I think, of all of the veterans. And from this vantage point, I'm really thinking a lot about wealth, because this is the wealth edition that's coming out. And there are basically 2 kinds of wealth: wealth that fills up your bank account and wealth that fills up your heart. And if you have the first and not the second, you're not truly wealthy. You're just solvent. So what I love to talk about is heart-filled wealth, which is often followed by abundance of all kinds. And so I'm just a living example of how magic can flow into your life, like the times that I dated Elvis, and at the time when I accidentally kind of became the first co-author in the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. I was there when Jack and Mark were brainstorming their concept. They had been turned down by almost every publisher in the world for the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and everybody thought it was a cookbook. And I had actually written 6 cookbooks, one of which had won Cookbook of the Year. And so their publisher said, oh, well, we have to have a cookbook. So that's what brought that in. And that made that the 3rd book in the series. So it had all sorts of recipes, because not all chicken recipes either. It was really because people come together around the table when they're traveling or they meet serendipitously. And then there are stories associated with that. So that was so much fun. And then I was one of the citizen ambassadors that went into the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War, and helped begin a dialogue between American and Russian people. And that basically changed my life forever, because my husband Paul and I said, wait a minute, things are happening here. People are sharing resources, and people are supporting each other and enthusiastic for each other. There were all these wonderful leaders from all over the world on the trip. And we came back, left the food world, and started the Inside Edge, which took off like a rocket. And we hosted speakers for over 37 years from all over the world. And some people walked in and just joined, like Louise Hay had never written a book, and Dr. Susan Jeffers. I used to give these parties that you had to show up as who you were going to be in 5 years. And Susan Jeffers showed up in a limousine and got out in a formal gown and said that she just returned from her 3rd New York Times bestseller tour. And she actually pulled that off. She wrote a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, and wrote 2 more books in those 5 years. So Jack Canfield said recently that he stole that idea and has done that for the closing of every training he's done ever since.
Oh, wow.
Had that futuristic party. So I feel that, magic has played a role in all those pivotal moments. Just the serendipity. I was engaged when I was in college to an extremely wealthy man. And I just had this sudden knowing that he was attracted to me because I was so decorative, but he didn't really know the real me.
Yeah.
And I broke that engagement. I knew that I would meet the right person. I just always knew I would have this wonderful soulmate. And I went on a trip to Hong Kong, had a sudden knowing that I needed to be down in the lobby in a certain place. So I threw on a really beautiful dress and went down and stood in the lobby, and out of the elevator walked Paul von Wellnitz, who was my soulmate and my husband for 25 years. And I'm just yakking away here. Is this okay?
No, this is perfect. Yeah, this is perfect. I do have a number of questions though. So what do you think contributed to your allowing your magical life to flow through you? Do you think it's predetermined, or do you feel like there are some things that people are doing or not doing to allow the magic in their lives?
Well, I think that's a really key question, because I think that we've all had inklings, we've all had coincidences and so on. But things showed up in my life so amazingly that I began to trust it. And I really began to ask all the time. There were times when careers fell apart, and I would just be pacing and saying, tell me what to do. And then I'd have this sudden insight. So that's how we moved from the cooking world into the Inside Edge. I had a sudden picture of a human potential organization, and everybody was really excited that we created it and everything. But it came to me like a window opened, and then closed. And I think the fact that I trusted that has made all the difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think
so how do you, because I know this is going to be a question that my listeners are going to want to know. How do you manage the difficult times when you can't hear that guidance, or when you are struggling with the fear? Because sometimes following that intuition takes a lot of courage, right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think it takes courage. And I think when you become very, very centered and you have no idea what to do, everybody's saying that, it's logical to do this or that, but there's something inside of you that's saying, no, I need to follow my heart. I think that is so absolutely key. And I think that scientists are proving all of this right now, that they are saying, that there is, the physicists are saying that there's this quantum field, and it contains all that is. And so the fact that I've been shown a critical path, I think always comes from my knowing and my trust to ask and listen. I think we have to become very still. And I've been a meditator for 50 years. And I use a product called Newcom, which it takes me into a kind of a flow state where I feel that I can much more easily access the communication. So the physicists are proving that we're much more connected to each other and to all that is. And this field is the divinity that includes absolutely everything, from our communication with our departed loved ones to the new Webb telescope that reveals the birth of the stars. And so this is all moving, lifting the intuitive connection from woo-woo speculation to proven science. And I think that I've just always kind of known that. I've known that, especially if I'm asking very intently, very fiercely for an answer, and I'm pacing back and forth, there's something about that vibration or that frequency that brings insights. And they happen very quickly around me. People who know me well know that everything changes just on a dime all the time, but it's always a step forward. You know, there's a stepping stone that just kind of shows up, or a person, or an invitation, like being with you today. Who knows what will come from this?
Yeah. Yeah. So have you ever had an experience where the guidance you received, like you doubted, like that you had, or that the circumstances were playing out in a way that you kind of were wondering, oh, is this, or did you always just have the trust?
Well, I've always trusted, but I think what's happening right now in my life is the most fascinating thing, because back in when I was 30 years old, a lawsuit that my father was involved in, and he had just died, wiped the family out financially. And I had no idea what to do. And I remember pacing the floor and saying, tell me what to do. And I heard the words voluntary simplicity. And that was really, I knew that obviously voluntary simplicity was a great thing to do. I've never done it. I went ahead and we had our career, but now that I'm 82 and I'm living in the desert where it's going to be 100 degrees for the next 4 months.
Wow.
and I've been widowed, you know, so I'm alone. I'm taking that voluntary simplicity idea and I'm going to run with it. And I've already been invited to some beautiful teaching establishments. So I'm selling everything I have. I'm giving away everything that I have. I'm selling my condo. And I'm just following a knowing that by simplifying my life so that it's just sacred and beautiful and not cluttered with all this stuff that people gather so much stuff and then they're slaves to it, you know? So I'm going to move into voluntary simplicity now. And it's wonderful because nobody's saying, oh, Diana, you're making a mistake. You know, everybody's saying, yes, you know? Yeah. And so I find that invitations are flowing in and people want me to teach this and that. And I'm certified in several kinds of yoga and all kinds of other writing techniques. I've done a lot of writing seminars for people all over the world. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and I'm going on the road. It's sort of a road trip to surrender is what I call it.
Yeah. And surrender is so important. I just want to go back to something that you had mentioned before, which is you didn't take the advice until much later. Do you think that we can always, like, if we don't follow the advice, that we always have the potential to get back on track to what our original plan was or what the guidance is? Well,
I think this advice about voluntary simplicity was so pure and so good for any phase of life. And I think if I had followed it more, that things would have been a little bit different. I got distracted, you know, by the success and, you know, things and having stuff and a nice, you know, really nice cars and things like that. I have always paid a lot of attention to my heart path and to what I call being in essence instead of being in ego. But I think I would have followed that path a little more purely. I don't know what difference it would have made. It might have made a financial difference or even some kind of a sacred difference. But I know that now that is key information for me. That's key advice. And it feels so right. I think that's the thing and it does to other people too. I was just talking to a wonderful man yesterday for an hour who's extremely wealthy and has, a warehouse of his art collection. And he's saying, oh, I want to do this. I need to do this. It's just ringing true with people, especially in the crazy times that we're in right now. It feels good. It feels right.
It's so interesting. One of the things that I've learned in my life has been that all of that stuff has energy attached to it, right? And so you can be kind of overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that you have because that's all just kind of energy. And so it must be something so liberating to be able to let go of all of this energy, this identity, these old stories, right? To really wipe the canvas clean so that you can say, okay, who am I going to be now? Right?
Exactly.
So it does seem like such a great adventure.
Oh, it is. It's just, I'm just lit up with it. And for several months, I was kind of dragging around thinking, gosh, here I am in the desert. I don't know that many people here. I never really created much of a community. And then all of a sudden I began getting ideas and signs. People were saying to me, oh, what are you going to do next, Diana? And I do these wisdom circles with women all over the world where it's a 9-month process. We have some 3-month ones coming up, but it's a 9-month process, just like conception and birth, where we decide that we are going to create some kind of a legacy project in our life. Most of these women are women of mastery. They've already created something great in their life, but they want to do something that really represents what their life has meant. And we have such fabulous bonding and deep connections, and people are really, really wondering and exploring what their ideal path could be right now. So they inspire me. There's just all sorts of them that are doing tremendous things. And we are kind of sounding boards for each other. And I love this kind of conversation.
You talked about the quantum, getting our vibration to a really high level is really important for us to aligning with our dreams. And it is so much more helpful when you do that in a community with people, right? Because they can help you, we can help each other get there, right?
That's the best thing of all. That's what I've always loved. I often say that I think our core wound is really key to, it's a sign of what we can do with our life. I was sent away to boarding school at the age of 8, all by myself. My brother went to a separate school, and we were only 3 miles from home. And it was profoundly lonely because this boarding school didn't have anybody in the lower school grades, just me and my own wing, So this core loneliness made me really yearn for and care about having soul companions, people that were true family, a family of choice. And I think that's why I love cooking so much, because I could invite people in and watch them connect around the table and create community. And then when that evolved into the Inside Edge, which became such a catalyst for connection, that all came out of that loneliness that I experienced. So, we can let those things destroy us, or we can find the gift,
Yeah, and you're talking about alchemy, right? You're alchemizing those really difficult moments into pure gold, or into something that could really be beneficial in, but so often we get stuck in those stories, right? Those identities of like, I'm the victim, this happened, because things have happened to all of us, right? And so how is it that we can then alchemize those experiences into amazing
I love that word
for
alchemy, and I'm glad you're using that. It's exactly. Where is the gold in this experience? How did it open my heart? How did it introduce me to things I would never have learned otherwise? Or people.
And I want to give another example of where you alchemize something. I had read your book.
Love Your Heart.
And you raise a really important issue, which is women who have heart issues, right? And that's not often talked about. So can you tell me a little bit about how that challenging experience led you to sort of do that sort of work for that is really helpful for women?
Yeah, well, I had a sudden heart attack in '09. I wasn't expecting it at all. Luckily, I got to the hospital really fast, and they put in 3 long stents, so I didn't need, open heart surgery. If it had happened 2 weeks later, I would have been on a cruise ship in Ephesus in Turkey. So I wouldn't even be talking to you now about this. But it made me very soulful. It made me really, it was a wake-up call, I think. And they told me that I needed to walk every day. And being someone who loves multitasking, I decided that I would grab a poem. I've always loved poetry because it can express things that are inexpressible. And so every week I would take a new poem on my walk, and as I walked along, there was something about the rhythm of being outdoors, and the words just went into my bones. And I'd love to recite one for you. Can I recite
yes,
a poem?
please.
That was the first one that I memorized, and it's the opening of my new book, Expect Magic. So it's the epigraph, I think they call it, of the book. And it's by Derek Wolcott, and it's called Love After Love. The time will come when you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who is yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. So that's what I'm doing right now. And the book begins with this feast on my life. I'm really looking back and appreciating the depth of all my experiences and the meaning and the joys, and recording or memorializing those things along with all the lessons that I've learned in life. So the heart attack was a great gift. And the other thing was that the Chinese have a legend that when we're born, we're connected by an invisible red thread. It connects us to everyone that we're destined to meet. And the Inuit culture believes that a red thread connects all the meaning in our lives. And now in quantum physics, they talk about the red thread, and so it's thrilling to me. And then in my book, which anybody can download on the homepage of my website, which is dianawentworth.com, the quantum physicists are talking about the red thread. And I took it and talked about the veins in our bodies, the veins and the capillaries. And it's all about taking care of yourself and loving yourself and living a heart-centered life. So I wrote that book just in a couple of months and published it myself for the American Heart Association. And then I got to speak at a bunch of the Go Red for Women luncheons. So I didn't let any of that go by without profiting on it.
Definitely. And it's helpful for women to know that part, right? Like it's something that is not often still talked about. I forgot I was going to ask. No, I remember. I was going to ask you about, since the poem I found so deeply moving, what it really brought up for me was the concept of self-love. What role has self-love played in your life and in your ability to be able to kind of align to your magic?
Well, I grew up probably much longer before most of your listeners. So back in my day, in the 50s, and there was a lot of judgmentalness and competition with women and all of that. And I went through a horrible puberty. I grew 8 inches in 1 year. I had acne. I was suddenly very voluptuous, and I had just been a little girl, and it was really hard. to love myself. And so I really thought of myself primarily as somebody that I could make decorative. I could learn to use makeup, and I did a lot of modeling in those days and everything. And I did transform my body into something that was much more acceptable. But I think that the women have had a lid on us for so long. We're not supposed to be loud. We're not supposed to be out there and full of exuberance and all of that. And something really funny happened because I was in a writing class with another teacher, and there were 500 people in the class, and she said, okay, everybody write about a school cafeteria experience. And I wrote about this horrible puberty and everything. And then for some reason, out of 500 people, she pointed at me and she said, Diana, read us what you wrote. And it was totally embarrassing. It was all about periods and,
Yeah.
it was gross. But afterwards, the next day, I was still kind of embarrassed, but I was laughing. I was laughing at, just the humiliation of it all.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, women have this, that ought to have a voice, And so I went to the computer, I went to GoDaddy, and I bought a domain called Women Writing Wild, because I was teaching all these writing classes. And I thought, well, let's tap into that. That's a great subject.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of days later, I got a phone call from David Fagan saying,
yeah.
Diana, I want you to write the foreword for a book called Women Gone Wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, how strange is that? That's kind of an example of the so-called coincidences that continually show up around me.
Beautiful. Can we talk, since we were talking about, self-love and then obviously love for others, can you tell us a little bit about how is it that you ended up writing your book on Send Me Someone? How is it that synchronicity led for you to find your second soulmate?
That was wonderful. It was horrible and wonderful at the same time, to tell you the truth, because Paul and I had been married 25 years. We had just celebrated our 25th anniversary. We had lit a candle to the 25 years that we'd had. Mm-hmm. We laughed and we cried. We marveled over it. We went out to a wonderful dinner and came back and lit a candle to the next 25 years. And neither one of us said a word. And I had a thought that went through my head, which was, is this our last anniversary? It was very strange. We went to bed very sober that night. And 2 days later, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Oh, wow.
And it was completely unexpected. He'd been just fine. And he lived another 4 months. And then just about a week before he died, he had fallen asleep on the couch, and I had gone to get a glass of water for him. And I heard him say, I don't want you to be alone. And what came out of me were the words, send me someone. And he said, wow. I will. And right after he died, I still felt him so present with me. I could still journal with him, and he would tell me certain things to do. And he told me to go out and buy a squirt gun. I mean, this is really a strange story. It was, I was like, what? And it was like,
this is what I was talking about, Diana. Sometimes the guidance that I get to, I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. Go on.
But I have learned to trust, and it was about 6:30 at night. And so the toy store was still open. I ran over there. They only had one squirt gun that looked like a hot dog with mustard on it. I mean, it was really strange. But it happened to be the night before our Inside Edge. It was a very big picnic called the Interconnectedness Picnic. It was right after the Interdependent Picnic, because it was right after the 4th of July. So I took the squirt gun to the picnic, and into the picnic walked a man named Ted Wentworth. Mm-hmm. And I had only met him very briefly. He had been widowed and had been looking for his new wife for 2 years. And he had dated 131 women.
Wow.
Which he kept track of in a little internet, not an internet black book, but on a document on a computer. And I remember the first day he walked into the Inside Edge, he came with a friend, and he was very psychic. And he said to his friend, "She's here. My new wife is in this room."
Oh, wow.
And so I was the host that morning. And somebody said, "Well, Diana, how are you really doing?" Because it had only been 2 months since Paul had died. And I said, "Well, it's really interesting being alone. The first man who looks at me with the idea of a live-in relationship could become the victim of an axe murder." And I wouldn't normally say something like that. That was like a frog that jumped out of my mouth. And so Ted was there for the first time. And during the intermission, he walked right up to me and he said, this is what he said to me, the very first thing. He said, "Will you live with me?"
Wow.
So this is about 2 weeks later. We're at the picnic
Mhm.
and nobody's paying any attention to me and my squirt gun. So I squirted him when I saw him, and he took off running after me. We ran all through the grounds. He yanked the squirt gun away. He threw me over his back, took the squirt gun out of my hand, and then squirted me in the face. He said, "So are you going to have dinner with me?"
Yeah.
And I married him 6 months later. So
Wow.
that was incredibly magic. That's how the book Send Me Someone was named that. And it's called A True Story of Love Here and Hereafter.
So powerful.
Hmm.
So powerful. Can I ask, in terms of when you had your heart attack, was it around the time, like, was it in between the husbands, or was it like, were you still
No,
married?
no, I had been married to Ted for about 15 years when I had the heart attack.
Mhm.
I married him in 89,
Mm.
and this happened in 09. So that's 20 years. I was married to him for 20 years.
Mhm. Oh, wow. That's a long time. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I was just wondering if there was a connection between the emotional aspect of your relationships and the heart attack, right? Because, as you've
And
heard.
that heart attack was a complete gift.
Mhm.
And the timing of it was the complete gift, because I really grew a lot from that. I became certified in a second kind of yoga, called restorative yoga. And I was certified by one of the founders of Yoga Journal. And then when I moved to Palm Springs here, when Ted and I moved to Palm Springs here 8 years ago, I went to a yoga class and it wasn't any good. And the owner with the salon of the studio was there. And I said, that isn't restorative yoga, because I'm certified in it. And I know. She says, "Oh, well, then you're going to teach yoga."
Yeah.
And so that began my yoga career,
Mhm.
and I had it all, and that was really fun because I called it heart yoga.
Mhm.
And I would insert my mystical poetry into the classes, because everybody holds the pose for about 4 minutes. Instead, it's not a fast yoga. It's
Yeah.
not a flow yoga or anything else. You use a lot of bolsters and other kinds of props in order to hold your body open, and you surrender into the pose. And it's really deep and wonderful, but there's a lot of silence there. So
Mhm.
people always enjoyed all the poetry that I knew by heart.
Mhm. And that's so powerful to be able to hold the pose, because I think that's probably where, like you said, it opens up space. And
Mhm.
since you mentioned the word surrender, I'm going to ask you a little bit about what your relationship with surrender has been, in what you're moving into in terms of surrender.
Well, I do think that faith and surrender are their last two big lessons. And when Ted was alive, we would every summer here in the desert, it gets so hot that we would go on a road trip, and we would really only know where we were going the first day. So we would normally head up toward Lake Tahoe, and then we would wonder, what park haven't we seen, or which direction should we go? Where should we go? We would ask. And I began to call that the road trip to surrender. So several people are saying they think that's the title of my next book, is The Road Trip to Surrender, because I'm going to be out there kind of living in a state of wonder and expectancy for the next right stepping stones to show up in front of me.
Mhm.
So I'd say my relationship with surrender is very alive right now. I'm waiting to hear where somebody thinks that I might have a little kind of a sacred space, maybe somebody's casita or guest house, where I can just have some basic things, and that I can travel and teach yoga and teach writing and go to luxury spas and be on the faculty. And
Mhm.
I just know all this is going to open up. I live in a state of wonder and expectancy, and I think that that helps.
Mhm.
Just being open and receptive is the answer and the
Mhm.
key.
Do you ever feel fear or doubt? Like, do you ever feel, and what do you do with those emotions? Like, how do you help people shift out of, just because that's what I hear, right? Like I've had experiences where I've fully trusted, had very clear guidance, fully trusted, even if it didn't make sense. And there was other times when, more so when it impacted other people, not so much myself, where I'm like, I don't know if I could, like, there's some doubt and fear, sometimes even negative thinking. So if
Absolutely.
how do you shift out of that negative thinking so that it doesn't, so you don't allow your energy to go down and it shifts you out of your magic?
Well, I'll tell you what I do, but first I'll tell you that yes, I do have those moments. Sometimes I'm absolutely terrified. I'm 82 years old, and I had been lifting a bunch of things and ended up with a bunch of back pain that I really hadn't figured it was from the lifting. And it was like, my gosh, 2 days from now I could be disabled. What am I going to do? Where would I live? What would I do with all this stuff? What I do every morning when I wake up is I smile. I remind myself to smile, because normally we wake up and think, oh gosh, what do I have to do today? Responsibility is there, and there's a fear, there's a natural fear that runs along with it. And the great teacher Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, had some great impact on the way I think of things. So she says there's like 17 seconds that we have to turn that around. So the way I do it is, first of all, I smile, because the smile sends a message to your body to release the feel-good hormone, endorphins and things like that. And then I do what I craft what I call a quintessential question, or a quantum question. So this question has the energy and the vibration almost already of the solution. It's not just, what do I do about my bad back? It's more, how can I most effectively light up this world? Or where's the most joy to be found today? You see, the feeling that you want is in the question itself. And I believe that that does more to generate the upward spiral that becomes my day. And as I get back in bed and I put on my headphones and I listen to an app called Newcom, and it takes me into a really elevated kind of a super learning space. And then I begin to just keep asking more and more creative questions. Sometimes I listen to a YouTube recording of Jan Phillips. You might want to jot this down, because she says she has like a 5-minute recording to music of something that she wrote that's called Think of Yourself. And she talks about think of yourself as all of, this divine opening, this, and she just goes on. And she's so powerful that it always reminds me, I think it's really important first thing in the morning to do these things that take us from a downward spiral into an upward spiral.
Yeah, that is so powerful.
I pretty much stay there all day. Greg Braden has a wonderful meditation that I love, where you put your hand on your heart, and you just doing that, just putting, and I always, in my Newcom sessions, I always have my hand on my heart, because that centers you, that takes you into, the most open place. And I begin to send messages to every cell to renew themselves in their original pattern instead of their current circumstance. So I feel that all enlivens my body, that I'm doing all the right things to give my body the nourishment it needs through my own suggestions and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you said is so powerful. I love the putting your hand on your chest. I've done compassion-based training, and that's one of the things that they teach you to do, which is, like put your hand on your heart or another soothing place to give yourself a moment of loving kindness, right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So exciting. I was wondering if you could tell, since you mentioned Newcom, do you want to talk a little bit about what that is? Because I know I'm going to get asked, if you don't mind.
Okay. Sure. It's NUCALM. And it's the only patented brain science. For years, it's been used by the military forces all over the world because of the stress that they're under. And they have a track called Rescue that really takes you into deep relaxation and stress relief. And the only way you could access this for so many years was by buying $6,000 headphones. And so it was prohibitively expensive. But running the Inside Edge, I was always inviting different speakers, and I invited the inventor of Newcom to come and speak, and I was fascinated. And then right after my husband Ted died 2 years ago, I heard that they had turned it into an app and that you could access it much less expensively. And I started using it, and I was just expecting to have some beautiful relaxation. But what I began to notice after a few weeks was that, wow, it was almost like I was able to download the solutions. And I even began to find that I could start dictating into my phone, just on the Notes app, 2,500 or 3,500 words of a book I was writing. And it would be so conversational. And it was almost like it was tuning me into my higher self. And so they had Tony Robbins as a spokesperson who had always just raved about it and wanted everybody he coaches to use it. They don't pay him anything. He just is a natural fan of it. And they had some other great sports figures speaking out for it. And so I'm not shy. I'm really good at asking for what I want. I reached out to Jim Poole, who's the president, and I told him that he needed me, that he needed an elder, who could talk about how wonderful the product was. And fortunately, he and his brother came out and visited me in my home, and I was able to show them through a friend of mine who did a PowerPoint about the future of Newcom. And so they actually hired me as a spokesperson.
Okay,
and now
great.
I'm going to take it into some new uses, because they have these tracks now that are called Flow and so on. And they're beautiful. The music is beautiful. I'm going to be using it in my yoga classes behind, underneath all of the poses, so that people are actually getting the benefit of this increased brain function. And they have it for sleep. They have it for all different purposes. But what I love is just the rescue tracks and the flow tracks. They have one called Ignite that is actually a little too powerful. Tony Robbins is involved in that one. It makes me manic.
No, yeah, we don't want that.
That was good when I was much younger. But, it just is the most wonderful thing. And I know that if you go to the website, they have me there speaking about it. I know I have a link somewhere that can give 15% off, but I just honestly don't know where. Go to my website, DianaWentworth.com, and go to the Newcom thing, and it'll take you to the right page to get 15% off. But they lower the price so much that you can join it for as little as $29 a month and have many of the benefits. So
That's
That's a big
wonderful.
difference.
So we do a transcription of the show, so I can add the links there as well. Like we can link
Okay.
directly to your site, and we can link anything that you want to offer. And that
Oh,
gives me now an opportunity to ask you about what you're working on. What do you want the audience to know about you? Where can people find you? Where can people work with you? Please
oh
share.
gosh. Well, yes, I can give a little 15-minute call, with people to see if they want to work with me. What I specialize in is these wisdom circles where people can kind of experience what I call encore magic or expect magic. And it'll have a lot of the tools of, like I told you about waking up in the morning and doing these certain things.
Mhm.
And people can decide whether they want to work with me. I work with people privately as a coach, just on their project, or we create these circles. My friend Robin Mullen and I have something called wisdom-circles.com. And you can go to that and see some of the different programs that we offer. I think it's really, really wonderful when women are working in community and gaining new friends and deep relationships and all of that. So you can pretty much find everything you want on my site and download the book as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And your Expect Magic book comes out in 2024, any month or just?
I think so. I have, I haven't marketed it to publishers yet.
Oh, okay.
I've been working on it for a few years. Some publishers take a very long time to get it out. I'm hoping it'll be out as soon as possible.
Yeah, that would be great because I look forward to reading it.
Thank
you
you
so much, Diana, for being on the show. It was such an enlightening conversation and so inspiring. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more from you. I did sign up for one of your circles, so I look forward to listening about that. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Love and Compassion podcast with Giselle.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was
Thank you.
delightful, and I just enjoyed you so much.
Thank you very much.